Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
You're welcome. I was afraid you've forgotten.
No, I've gone through a lot to be here. My globe decided to mess up, so I had to send someone to go buy me Airtel to meet up. I didn't know what happened. The whole of yesterday and today, my data didn't function. I have data, but I don't know what happened. So I tried all I could, it didn't work. So this evening I sent for Airtel and I got a new bundle. So I'm on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's okay.
It's good to have you again.
Thank
To
you.
all our members that are here, you're welcome. I don't think we will spend time waiting since we want to have a little recap of the last lecture. Before we move on, I think we just start.
Okay.
Instead of waiting, yeah, they'll join us as they come in.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. How many of us are here? Oh, only 5 participants. That's crazy. Anyway, part of life. Okay, we have 2 hours to roll, and I have to really go quickly so we can do the recap as requested, and then we run to infographics. So we're doing policy briefs and infographics, and we've done policy briefs. Regrettably, we've not had the worksheet submitted, so we can test understanding of the module we've had, but depending on the coordinator, we can find extended time, maybe to talk a little bit about it when you put your hands on it, because you can't give me feedback without putting your hands on drawing up your policy questions and finding the policy issues around your research, and telling me some recommendations, actionable recommendations that you've been able to put up from your findings, and how you projected those findings to have an implication and then to have policy options. So you really need to put your hands on it, and then we can have a discussion from either challenges or clearer picture. So this is same slide I wrote with you on the 30th of October 2020. Nothing has changed on it, just to use that to guide us in what we did. I remember Professor Adeshope read the module objectives, saying that you define relevant terms in policy making, because we're trying to do policy brief. So why are we doing policy brief? Of course, we're going to see the definition that it is a tool in policy making. So we have to understand a little bit about policy making, context and sources of information, then steps in policy development, tactics that we can deploy to reach our policymakers, and then demonstrate how to write a policy question, know the key characteristics for assessing usability of evidence, and then the recommendations, how to make them actionable, and then knowing function and key elements of a policy brief. Then the assignment has been to begin to draft yours. So if we had the policy information, the worksheets completed, it would have been easier for us today to embark on drafting a policy brief. So maybe when we close today, I'm not going to tell you to write a policy brief, but to go ahead to complete the worksheets that have been shared with you. When we make progress there, it will be easier to now write our policy briefs. So we try to look at data, evidence, policy decision making, and evidence informed policy making. Last time, different people defined what data means to them, and they were really quite clear on what data is, that we use that for basis of argument, discussion, making calculations, reasoning together, or even as an individual. So we'll always look at data to help us do any of this that on the screen. And then we collect the facts, and statistics for reference or for analysis. So different researchers, different authorities, different institutions have used fact figures, statistic details, particulars, and specifics as synonyms for data. So we define, for those who came for ELA conference, so you kept hearing evidence, evidence. So this is what evidence means: available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid. So as many of us are researchers, we shouldn't make the mistake of thinking that evidence revolves around only research. Research is one of the evidence sources. So it's available body of facts, all bodies of facts that could help us to test and determine if our belief or proposition is true or valid. That is an evidence. It can be expert opinion that becomes body of fact that can be tested to determine if a belief or proposition is true or valid. So those could come down in evidence. So it can be research experiment, it can be field research, it can be systematic review that you do. So all of those are evidences. So these are some of the types I've mentioned already: pilot studies, evaluations. Which other one haven't I mentioned? Okay, the media. We have reliable media houses. So we can say in Nigeria, like the Guardian newspapers, you know, media houses that we have so much respect for. So we can cite the information coming out from those as evidences. So policy, we said, is a course of action or the principles on which those actions are based. And we gave a series of examples. We try to make it even informal, looking at homes, saying in our homes, if we decide that we come in from the back door, it becomes a policy of that family. Everybody arrives, maybe after 5 p.m., you should use the back door. That becomes a policy. So also the principles on which those are based, maybe robbers could access the front door, or you put on the light and people see when you're coming in. So that may be the principle upon which the action is based. So that also becomes a policy. So either the cause of action or the principles, excuse me. So either the cause of action or the principle on which they are based could become the policy. So, and the decision making, excuse me. All right, so the decision making process, some of the processes that examine the possibilities and options, comparing them, and then coming down with one particular cause of action, making a choice, is what we call the decision making. So when we say we are making decisions in terms of policy, we include all the processes that bring the possibilities and options available to us for choice. So that process we call decision making. So evidence in policy making, why we really need to have this evidence that help us to make informed decision or to choose a course of action. They help us to make good investment decisions so they don't get wasteful. They help us to increase efficiency and performance and service, because when we show evidence for what we are doing or what we have done, so it makes for efficiency and performance and service, because we don't just do it because people are doing, but because we have reliable reason for doing. So, and it strengthens the programs and improve results. So programs are strong because you're able to show why and how, why 20% should come on board instead of 10, and why we need to go to Lagos to deliver on this instead of Port Harcourt. So it strengthens it and improves results. So accountability also and reporting becomes easy. Improve quality of services you provide, and then the acceptability, because evidence is the way to go. So when you employ evidence in your programs, so it becomes more acceptable to more serious communities. So it also helps to explain certain decisions becomes reason for choosing one of many compelling arguments. So remember last time we talked about different policy options and then coming down with one. So it helps you to look at all of the options, even when they are all compelling. So, but you have one because evidence has tilted towards that direction. So building a consensus when everybody sees evidence, you may not have a choice, even when you don't believe in that direction, because evidences abound, reliable evidence or robust evidence. So you have a consensus, and then it raising additional resources and showing effectiveness of policy and relationship between the risks and benefit that you derive from such activities. So evidences, when we derive those, we have new policies springing up because of the evidences, or we have existing policies that were weak, amended. We also have recommendations adopted by implementers from the evidences we provide. And we can have guidelines written from the evidences. We can have the policy dialogue at the upper level being influenced. We can have inclusion on the technical working group agenda. So those are powerful working groups, can have the agenda expanded because of the evidence. And then levels of funding may change. It may decrease or increase because of the evidences, and it can make changes to programs and services that an institution offers, and it can scale up programs. So we talked about the process of making policy. So we said the first thing is identification of problems, and then analysis of policy, strategy and policy development, policy enactment, and then implementation. So we said it's not straightforward as you're looking at it. This is a perfect circle. So when this way, we said this is beautiful engagement and education. So whatever policy we are formulating, we should have at the back of our mind that it revolves around the stakeholders. So we must include the stakeholders, like dealing with smart agriculture, climate change. So who are the stakeholders in these big areas? So you must engage them, you must educate them to be on board. Otherwise, you can't have an effective policy. So problem identification, what is the problem, analyzing it, and knowing that policy is course of action or the set of principles on which they are based. So analyzing that problem and the course of action you want to propose, and then making strategies how it can get in there. Okay, then enactment will be the law aspect of it to make it enforceable. That is not you. So you can get it to the people who can make it a law, who can make it enforceable. And then when it becomes enforceable, the next thing is how can it be implemented? Because there are a lot of enforceable policies that have been enacted, but not implemented. So that's why it is not job done until you have implemented. So the cycle continues from implementation. You identify another problem, either limitation or applicability or something. There must be something to be identified. You go back and the cycle continues. So because we say it's not a perfect system, we want to understand why it's not perfect. Perfect system having just the 4 stopovers. So we said it's more like this in the real system, because a lot of stakeholders, remember stakeholders were in the middle in that earlier slide. So now the stakeholders have been scattered the way it is because they don't stay together in the middle waiting for the activities to go around them in a perfect system, in the real system. So we have them scattered all over: the donors, the civil society, the private sector, the ministries, the parliament, the cabinet. So cabinet for us here, we may be having the house, the different houses, the small house, the bigger house, the regional houses at the state level and federal level. So these are different stakeholders in who, like you're doing smart agriculture, who are you going to influence? So if you consider all of these people and the interactions that are going on with between and among them. So you see how complex it becomes. So you set agenda, take decision, formulate policy, implement it, and activate the M and E to see what problems comes out of it, how it is rolling, so that you can get back to the agenda setting and then to decision making by those charged with that responsibility. And then they formulate policy, that's enactment, and then implementation. So you can see this has become more like the reality, what's happening around policy making. So evidence in this context, we said what happens to it? There are many factors that can militate on the evidences that are available: judgment, resources, values, and policy context, the lobbyist group, habits, tradition, culture, uh, contingencies, experiences, and expertise. So all of these have ways of playing different roles in the evidence that we generate. So sometimes evidences are true, but they are limited by the culture of the place or the people where you want to apply this evidence to influence a policy, to get a policy enacted or to amend the existing one. So you have to think about the judgment of the people, maybe the stakeholders, experiences people have will also determine how well they use the evidence. The expertise, someone who doesn't have this knowledge in climate change and smart agriculture may not be able to use evidence that is even reliable to get a policy that is holistic, that can work. So all of these are factors that can influence the evidence that are available. So consider them when you are dealing with the evidence. Are you an expert in the field? Do you have experience? Are you biased in terms of making a judgment? How much of the resources do you have with you? Financial resources, human resources, equipment resources, and all of that. What values do you have in your institution? What do you value? Do you value integrity? Do you value equity? What are your values? Even as individual, what is your value? Lobby group, what are the lobbies interested in? The media houses, the pressure groups like the ASU, if you're providing evidence. So the pressure groups, what are they interested in? Can you align your evidence and your target with the lobbyist group? Can you engage the lobbyist group so they can change orientation if they originally were not aligning with that evidence and you think the evidence is good enough, is robust? Yeah. So we looked at the steps in policy development. We talked about identification of a policy issue, which we saw in that complex circle, the preliminary considerations, assembling the team to draft the policy, analyzing the problems, having the stakeholder engagement, then setting your goals and objectives of the policy that you're envisioning will come out. What are the goals and the objectives? So we talked about the goals. We look at it again and how we can have good policies without objectives and they are still good. They have goals, but they don't have objectives. We also have those with goals and objectives. So we have identification of policy options to achieve the goals and objectives. So we have options and then you recommend a particular one. So we talked about appraisal of the policy option to choose. So you may consider the cost, you may consider benefit. I mean, in trying to prioritize the option, the policy options that you are suggesting. So when you're trying to take your reader or your audience to a particular recommended one, so your consideration may be based on cost, benefit, the risk associated with the other option that is actually good, okay? So effective, how effective they are, how acceptable they are, what of the feasibility, is it feasible? Yeah, it's good idea, is it feasible? What of the capacity to do that? It may be working in some other country, maybe we don't have the capacity in our country. What of the political will? Are the politicians ready to do that? Sustainability, evaluability, can it be evaluated? These are important. So You can also answer the question whether they're consistent with current government priorities, existing laws, regulations, and policies. So where the government priorities are, like we mentioned, Agenda 2063, AU agenda, SDG goals, all of the priorities, government aligning themselves with them to gain acceptance or recognition or something. So are you trying to now align your evidences or your recommendation to find where there's a meeting point with those noise, where the country priorities are lying? Are they gender sensitive these days? Everybody talks about gender consideration. So are they sensitive gender-wise? Human rights, is it considered? If your suggestion does not consider human rights in this era, I'm pretty sure it's going to fail. So key stakeholders, are they accepting it when you engage them? So you don't think, okay, I have the brand new idea. So even if they don't, I know this works, but you need to get a buy-in. If they're not buying in, you have to use some of that expertise to make sure they understand what they're doing and get a buy-in. Then the policy gets drafted by the team, then deliberates policy, the like a challenge section with stakeholders so they can look at what is done. You make presentations and they make input, which you can now validate and get an official endorsement. Launch out. I said the other time that it's important that policy is launched. If you don't launch a policy, you may not hold people accountable when they fail to comply with those causes of action that the policy provides for because they do not know it. They may claim ignorance even when they know, but if you launch it, launching gives it that voice so that people can know it can become a big thing because it's been launched, the noise is there, maybe there are jingles going on, or there are public announcements, or going to different places people value to find crowd and talk about it, especially the audience where it will be relevant. So M&E and document the lessons learned so that other people can look at the lessons in terms of review. We said making policy, like we said, they're enacting policies, so they are laws in some way. And we said the laws are like sausage, you shouldn't watch them being made. We talked about sausages where the meat, whether it's from the pigs, that the pork meat, or the chicken, or whatever kind of sausage. So we have the intestines of maybe like chicken. So you have to stop them in there. So it's a messy kind of thing. If you look at this drawing, it's messy. That's how the policy drafting is like. It's messy. Imagine all of the donors, interests, all the stakeholders, communities, lobbies, media houses, the ministers, all of the interests. So catching everybody and playing some kind of diplomatic moves to get them on one page. So it's messy. That's why we think about sausage. But you enjoy them when they're ready. When a good policy is eventually crafted, you enjoy just like the sausage. So policy window is that point at which the policy should move on to the government agenda and toward decision and action. So how do we then get to that point that we call a policy window? So we have the political system, we have the human element. So human element will deal a lot with you and I. So political system will have the bodies of government, the parliament, the different houses, how laws are made. All of these are in the polity or the political system. So you need to understand the structure that existing in the polity that you intend to have influence. So you can't just walk into any polity to influence them or the system if you do not understand the structure that are there. So the human element is, like I say, you and I. So it's about people and ideas, but mostly people. When we talk about human element, we basically talk about human beings. So it's essential to cultivate relationships and opportunities So when we are working and happen like now in this working group, you may have interacted with a lot of people in government, even in IOCs or international organizations, okay? So you may have in one way or the other related with them, held engagements with them, attended trainings with them or trained them, whichever way. So keep the relationships, they are really important and opportunities you have to make presentations or to provide answers, provide evidence. These are very important times and values that you don't need to throw away. So they have different ways they like to be contacted. So you need to really know them, the policymakers, so you can meet them the way they like to be met. So you can keep that human element up. And with the human element and political environment, you can be rest assured that your policy issue will cross the window. So if you look at the window here, when it crosses the window, that means it's making it on the agenda. And you really want your issues to be on the agenda before you can have a policy come out of it. So we have the problem stream, the policy stream, the politics stream. All of these streams are heading towards the window. And if there is no convergence of these three, we don't have any successful crossing through the policy window to the agenda. So the problem stream, we consider it a problem because this is where you deliberate on what the issue is that makes you call for a change or makes you call for a new thing that makes you draw attention. And then the policy stream will be the programs that you want to implement to make that change happen or the solutions you're bringing on the table. The political stream will be if the politicians are willing, the political will. So that's the political stream. You need to bring these three together. The problem, the programs, that the solution you're bringing or the suggestions you're doing to ameliorate whatever issue you identified. And then understanding the polity so that you can have willing politicians to help you get into the window. So we said as climate smart agriculture people, so we thinking about overall increasing productivity to meet the teeming population, to enhance resilience of both human beings and the animals, the microorganisms. So resilience to different kinds of variety that's bringing up the invasive species, all of these, and to reduce emissions. This is what we're trying to achieve in climate smart agriculture, and that's who you are. So we try to look at policy questions around your area. So policy question will be a question of what needs to be done to respond to a specific public issue. It has to be public before it becomes a policy question. So a question that generates information for addressing or responding to a specific public policy issue is what we call a policy question. So it will become a way to clarify what evidence you need to search for. So if you don't have a good question, a good policy question, you will not find enough evidence to address it. So that's why it's good to formulate a good question. So I said, for example, how can we address a declining crop use, given the growing population of the Niger Delta? Because we're talking about the climate smart agriculture, so it is important, it's a good policy issue that we'll want to highlight in this question. Declining crop yield. How can we address it in the growing population in the Niger Delta? I put another one, how can we improve ocean health in the southern Nigeria? These are all policy questions that are very relevant to your area. Remember, it generates information for addressing or responding to a specific public policy issue or concern. So the policy concern here, the second one is the declining ocean health. So ocean health has been reported to be declining in status. So this is a policy problem that is public, it's not just a personal problem. And the other one is declining crop yield. So these are big issues, okay? So it can be focused on a risk factor, a disease, a condition, a program and services, current practices, current degree of implementation. This, so you can be looking at taking up the implementation of existing policy. You want to take that up, they're not doing enough. So your policy brief, what you're trying to generate, may be targeting on improving the existing implementation, not necessarily to bring a good one. So it may be around the current practices. It may be programs, you want to introduce new programs to address one thing you have observed, a public policy issue. It may be a risk factor you're targeting to mitigate such risk. So you need to think about it. So we try, because most of us are researchers, so we try to look at the differences between the research question and policy question. And we now say the research question generates information for understanding or explaining a phenomenon, while a policy question generates information for addressing or responding to a specific public policy issue. So in other words, the policy questions are often broader than the research question. So you can have many research questions in one policy question. So policy question will move the research to the next level. What to do? So what question is often there. So what? Yeah. After this, so what? What do I do with this? What does it matter to me? Why should I care about it? These are questions that are raised when you have a policy question. So we put some example. What factors explain the lack of progress in reducing carbon emission in Nigeria? So that is streamlined. But if you say, in what ways can the carbon capture program in Nigeria be improved to improve resilience of farms and landscapes? So it becomes broader. So look at how can we address the frequent flood in Nahoda East community is big. It's a public issue, is big. So this one, why is Ahoda East community susceptible to frequent flooding? So you have defined, you have delineated the issue to one thing. Why are they susceptible? So, but this is addressing the frequent flooding. So it's not one thing around flooding, a lot of things. This is one thing. Why is the community susceptible? So the susceptibility of the community to flooding is what we're interested in. But here we're addressing the whole frequent flooding. So what's the nexus between policy and practice? Here, how effective is the implementation of the community health strategy or the guidelines? So how are the communities and non-state actors contributing? How can we improve? So when you ask a policy question, it already generates information to improve how to improve a policy, a public policy issue. But this is more narrow in research. That's why our research is time bound. In the university, follow the program. So we have the research question, or you're responding to building your CV, or responding to a grant you won, or that's kind of, we are always guided by specific things. But the policy things are around the public, not necessarily wanting, we may want to develop a formula for calculating something. That's a research question. But the policy question now is always looking at a public issue to attend, and it's very big. It can bring up a lot of research questions. So we talked about the steps already. We looked at it, how to identify policy issues, framing the question, and expecting an iterative process. So meaning that there are different components relevant to the question and situation. So it goes like a cycle in the process of developing a policy question. So is your policy question framed like this in these 3 steps? So question by stage is what we have here. The first one now is agenda. So how big is the problem? So you're trying to, because we are trying to see that our policy briefs, when we develop them, go to the policy window and make the agenda. That's the only way we can influence a policy. So in framing the question, the policy question, we try to consider that agenda stage, the different stages of policy making. So how big is the problem? So we can begin by pushing how big the problem is, putting them in percentage. So the magnitude of the problem, we may focus on that. So at this point, we say different types of evidences are needed to the type that can influence the question. So when you're looking at, if your policy issue is focusing around formulation of policy, not on agenda. So what you're looking at is now what are the options? What are the options? So if you're looking at implementation, the policy issue you're bringing is focusing on implementation of existing policy. So you want to talk about what is the experience. So your evidences will dance around what experiences are available. So you can use that to push for implementation of the policy. So if the policy has been implemented, your problem is on evaluation. The big issue you're bringing is evaluation. So you may want to focus your evidence on how effective has the implementation been. So you can make comparison countrywide or region-wide, or match them against existing standards. So we put some examples of questions, maybe when we set them, when I send to you, maybe you can look at the question and form yours. We try to put examples of questions at different stages. So this agenda setting, what kind of question, just like what we did in the previous slide, how big is the problem? So you now put it on agenda. So which the magnitude, the focus, geographic areas. Oh, it's happened in Ghana, it happened in, maybe say it happened in West Africa. So you're showing the magnitude. It happened in another, maybe in Southern Europe. Okay, happened among all teenagers. So all of these, you're talking about magnitude, how big the problem is. We gave some examples on the formulation stage. Okay, so you're talking about now the options that are available, because you want to make sure that your evidences will help to formulate a policy. So what you're focusing on is pushing evidences that show options that are available. So we move to implementation. You want to talk about experiences. So practical experience, how to improve the information need. Then we have the evaluation. So how it works, how to increase the coverage, maybe the program's intervention made, you think that effect is very minimal. Maybe the coverage area is so skewed. So you're thinking about how to increase coverage. So you're giving evidences that will help to show that the coverage was poor or it wasn't effective. So this is what you're trying to achieve at the evaluation stage. So we talked about the goal and policy objectives. So we said the goal describes the range of desired outcomes that you're wishing to achieve if the policy gets implemented. But we said the objective goes a step further to make it measurable, how you can measure that the goal has been achieved. We gave some examples here. If you minimize the risk of injury and damage, that's a goal, that's a policy goal. So if you set goal around accidents, so you're now talking about minimizing the risk of injury and damage is a goal. Maintenance of good driving record. Yeah, if you have a good driving record, you are good for it. Low insurance premium, they like to hire you because you don't, your insurance won't go so high. You don't have that record. And then lowering repairs and maintenance costs. So we can spend less as an organization. So these are goals set around the driving policies, driving and accident policies. But the objective now would be no accidents, self-cause or otherwise. So that if you have 2 accidents, so that means you have overshot that. We agreed the objective is no accident, that's 0 accident. So now the objective makes it measurable. But if you're looking at the goal that say minimize the risk of injury and damage, So it is not measurable. You know the goal where you're heading to, but you can't say whether you really fulfill the goal without tying it to objectives that has a way of measuring it. So driving infringement points to 3 per year. So if you have more than three, that means we're not achieving policy objective. Insurance premium below 600 per annum, $600 per annum. So that means if we do more than 600, we are not good with our policy. Repairs and maintenance below $1,000 per annum. So it's measurable, but policies are not measurable. But we say that there are a lot of policies that are good, but they don't have objectives, they have only goals. So you can derive objective from those goals to be able to measure it if you want to do M and E. So these are the forms that we gave us to fill. Because we said strategic communication, because we are designing policy briefs, we want to make sure that we have policy issues clearly defined. So it's important that we understand strategic communication in this field that helps you to bring out the policy goal, and then who are you making this policy for? Who is going to benefit or enjoy the policy? Who will the policy benefit if implemented? And then who will make differences around the changes you desire? Who will bring about policy formulation or policy implementation? So you have the audience. Who are they? Who are the secondary audience? What do you know about them? We ask this question. So if you want to make a policy amendment around maybe smart agriculture, and then you find out that the person that can make that happen is maybe the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, that becomes your primary audience. So if you find out, because you do audience baggage in what I know about them, you find out that, let's say, the vice chancellor of your university or the director in your institute is close to the minister. So the director can become your secondary audience because he helps to make it happen. He can influence your primary audience, who can influence your big issue. So this is how you determine your primary and secondary audience. So I mentioned that assessing evidence, synthesizing evidence, and applying evidence, very important modules, but it's not what we're doing in this. But you really need to know about them, how to access evidence, how to synthesize them, how to apply them, to be able to put them together, to write a policy brief, and then end up with policy recommendation. And we said in this module that we want to have a recommendation that is actionable. So simply written, we said the recommendation is a policy advice. In a policy brief, what we call policy advice is actually the policy recommendation. So the chief product of the work of government manager is to create and administer public policy. This is their basic work. So how do we do it? How do we help them? The government managers, like the scientific officers at the House of Assembly or the Senate. So how do we help them? So we should make sure that we're giving them simple information that are factual. Remember when we treated data, so data needs to be factual. We don't need to fabricate data. So we tried to give some examples. We said Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations should develop climate smart agriculture training manual, a reference manual for agricultural extension agents to provide some general principles and examples to follow for optimal output. So this is a serious recommendation after writing your policy brief, maybe person writing on influencing the practice existing in agriculture by making a manual, a reference manual that maybe extension agents can use. So we said for it to be smart, or for the recommendation to be actionable, that we need to know who should carry out the recommendation and what recommendation they should carry out. And then if they carry that out, what should happen? So we should find out in recommendations that we say actionable. Otherwise, it should just be redundant. Nobody does it. So when making specific recommendation, know what the current situation is, what is working and what is not working. You can't come back with a recommendation that is not working in practice. So you need to find out what is working and what is not working. So you make sure you're adding, otherwise you won't be attractive. They won't listen to you. They won't like to see your policy brief. So this type of analysis can improve the recommendations you propose and give them credibility. Yeah. It also allows you to effectively respond to counter arguments when you submit a policy brief and you're invited for interaction. So a lot of people, they bring in a lot of people who are experts in your field. And then when they're looking at what you submitted, if you're not armed very well, if your recommendations are not actionable, so you may cave in to the concern they raise and bring you down forever. So, but if you make sure that your recommendations they are actionable because you've said why they need to do what you're recommending and who does that. So if you do, it helps you to argue your way through and become convincing. So these questions are important. You ask them what specifically needs to be changed, how will this change come about, what resources will be needed, where will the resources come from, what is the overall benefit to the policymaker and to the society. Very important. The word actionable suggests that recommendations should use active language like engage, use, incorporate, develop, okay, retire, should write, should draft. These are actionable language, actionable words that that make the recommendations actionable. So let's look out for them. So policy briefs, they are pieces of information put together as a tool, standing alone to help policy makers to make changes around policy issues that are presented before them. So they are important research products for use by decision makers. So they can be particularly effective in bridging research evidence synthesis. So there are research products, either laboratory research evidence synthesis that we do. So they can be particularly effective in bridging research, evidence, and policy. These are the main functions that policy briefs serve to convey the urgency of the issue. If the issue is not urgent, no need bringing it up. You have to make sure that the issue you're bringing up in the policy brief is burning. Present the recommendations, provide evidence to support the policy options and the recommendations that you have made, and point the reader to additional resources. So they want to see in a policy brief impact of your policy recommendation. So this would depend on how well the arguments are presented. So it's important that it's short. In the ELA conference, some policymakers said they want to see two-page policy brief, but we teach 4 to 6 pages, because 2 pages you may not have anything in the two-page document. I think 4 to 6 has a wider support globally, 4 to 6 pages of policy brief. So you can have, because in as much as you're trying to be brief, you must put information that are necessary to convince your audience about that policy issue, the options you provided, and the recommendation you are giving. So in as much as you try to be simple, short, try also to be comprehensive. Okay, so content also should be useful and relevant. A visual diagram may be useful. It should be clear. Key messages should have a section so they can see what message resonates from what you have put together. And of course, references. So you have a title, executive summary, or key messages, introduction, justification for the policy options you're making, and then your own recommendation that is actionable. References follow. So you can have table graphics, photographs, authors, acknowledgements, publication details. These are elements that can be found in policy brief. So this was the second worksheet I gave to you, to write title of policy brief, and then the policy issue, the problem you want your policy brief to respond to, who is the primary target audience for your policy brief. I said there may be more than one, so use bullets. If there are more than one, you already have this document. What does your primary audience already know about the problem, so that you can bring new information, not just what they already know, because they just say there is nothing new. So you need to know what they know, so you can know what to put before them. What they know, okay, you may want to strengthen what they know by providing more evidence to tie it up, or you may want to give information that they don't have completely. What doesn't your primary audience also know? The people who directly will make the changes, so you need to know that. What are your key arguments? Sorry. What are your key arguments with the policy brief? Put them forward with supporting information like referencing the sources of the argument. If it's your research, also put it there. So, sorry. List some of the information sources. Is important that you do list it. Provide some indicative timelines to guide you while drafting your policy brief. So this is where we end the discussion on policy brief. So if you want to ask any question, quickly you ask, so we can go to infographics. Hello? Hello?
Good evening, everyone, once again.
Good evening.
Okay, me, I'm suggesting maybe you will just go ahead.
Yes, I think so, because of time.
Because of time.
Okay.
At the end of everything, then all the questions can come at once.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
All right.
All right, so making yourself an infographic. So when the name comes, infographic, what comes to your mind? If you ask Google, what is infographic? Google would like to show you a lot of pictures I project to you in a moment. But what you tend to achieve with this module, understanding how to develop an infographic, will be to understand what makes an infographic, know why they can be effective as a policy tool when you're drafting your policy brief, or when you're meeting policymakers, when you're making presentations, and when you are engaging. It describes how to plan for your infographic. That's what we want to achieve in this module. So I'll show you this what infographics will look like. A lot of pictures you can see here. It has information component and it has graphic component. We are used to graphics. We make charts. We take photographs. We plot graphs. We have maps, especially you in the field of climate. You do a lot of maps. So all of those are graphics. Now, inflated the graphics you have into some form that will be more informative. So you have information component and graphic component, but now they are embedded with some skills that they become one document. So this proverb helps us better if we want to understand what an infographic is. It says, tell me and I'll forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I will understand. These are Chinese proverb. Tell me and I forget. Most times we yeah, they clap for us, wonderful, wonderful. And then the next minute you ask the person what you said, they don't remember. I don't remember. You show me, show graphics, I may remember. When I remember those beautiful colors, I may remember. But involve me and I will understand. What you understand, you don't tend to forget in a hurry, unlike what you remember, what was shown you. When they involve you, like infographic involves you, that's the essence of this proverb, a Chinese proverb. infographics involves you. It gets you to walk through it and understand. So when you walk through it and understand, you don't forget, unlike just seeing a graph and going away. You may remember, there's a chance that you remember when you see the graphics, unlike the telling. But when you are involved in infographic, you will understand. So infographic is a way to present information, data, and knowledge in a visual manner. So it often includes data, but must also provide context in the form of illustrations, facts, quotes, and captions. So I said often include data. So that means that it must not include data. You can have infographics that will have no data. You may have it with data. So what is important that it has information, knowledge in a visual manner. It may involve data. So this what Google thinks. If you ask Google what is infographics, this is what you're going to see. You can try that after the lecture. You see all of this. So these are infographics. So a lot of information, facts, knowledge displayed in a visual manner. So you add all of this together. This is a typical infographic. Why vacation time is good. So you must have to make it in some way that it will have a flow. That's what I was making for my presentation when I was given the NEF awards, the Next Einstein Forum Award. We're supposed to make presentation like acceptance or give a little speech around our research in Kenya, but the COVID-19 came. So I was trying to use infographics to put something together. But I didn't finish. As they canceled the stuff, I stopped. But I have my slide where I started building because I needed to speak for 10 minutes only and talk about a whole lot of my research and how I've influenced the society. So trying to get some infographic briefer. And then because of some of the advantages that we learned today that infographic has, so I was thinking of that. So if you look at this, you see numbers 1 to 6. That tells you should start reading from 1 to make sense. So why vacation time is good for smarter brain. So you look at the images that are there. So some of them are not really saying anything, but it drags you. It drags you to the information. So brain, it has head. Head contains the brain. So putting a head there kind of takes you on to be involved. Remember, we say involve me and I understand. So you're getting involved. So it boosts brain power. That's number 1. So there is a text there. You see the combination of text, image, graphic, or whatnot to convey information, to make it sit, to make you understand, and it sits with you. So when your brain is completely relaxed, experiments have shown that it consolidates knowledge and brain power, improving. This is from Harvard School, the research carried out in Harvard. So if you look at prompts full recharge. If you relax, you have a recharge. When you're recharging your phone, your battery, so it solves problem. Of course, innovations, problem solving, we have the bulb that's bringing out light. That icon we have often, so you try to connect with what people can connect with to the information that you are given. So that what infographic does for you. There are some tests that are not too lengthy, short tests. Okay, so the test is embedded. Some may not have text and will still be infographic. Some will have text embedded in images, graphics. So this is typical example, prevent disease. So live longer, someone say, hey, like, yay, somebody's happy, living longer. So vacation time, 12 reasons why your brain craves vacation time. So you see how they put the 12 reasons. They put slippers, like if you're on vacation, most times you travel, you're in a hotel, you have slippers, you have your mats to lay on, you have beach umbrella to sit under, to dine wine, you have time to regulate what you have to achieve. You have some undies, maybe talking about a woman, what you need to pack into your bag, radio for relaxation. You see, so you just put this thing and already the person who is reading is thinking about, as you're looking at it, you're already getting relaxed, your briefcase, you're packing your bag, your drinks around it. So this is vacation. How hard are we working? So you see numbers, 80%, 92, 40, 57. So this kind of what you do around infographics. So why use the infographics? We live in a world where we're already inundated with data and information every day. You can see what happens with your WhatsApp. You can't even cope with the different groups you belong to, your personal information from different contacts. So a stream of information is going on. So we can't deal with it. So we need infographics now than never to be able to cut down the volume of information. So it helps us with speed. Attention span every day is falling. The last research says it has fallen from 12 seconds to 8 seconds. That's attention span. If you are paying attention, after 12 seconds in 2000, you lose attention and then you can pick up depending on your passion. But now they're saying it's falling to 8 seconds. So as you're listening to me, it's possible that after 8 seconds, you drift and remember you have to cook food or you're going somewhere, attention span is falling. So we also have a lot of research that has shown that average person reads about 200 to 250 words in a minute in non-technical material. So you can imagine what happens in a technical material. So on the other hand, the human eye can recognize 36,000 visual messages in an hour. So this gives credence to infographics. That means we can recognize 600 messages visually in a minute. This is amazing. Compare that to what you can do with words and what you can do with visual message. So it's every advantage that we do infographics. So it helps us with comprehension, to comprehend. Look at this, the fact behind food prices. Make the caption very bold and glaring. The fact behind food prices. So if you look at this without reading it, you have the con. So the con tells you something. We're talking about food. So already we have con as food. So they have given 10 facts that they want you to know. So if you look at first one, weather, it has talked about the drought, flooding, and heavy rainfall, freezing, that militating against adequate food supply. So growing food with all these weather conditions has become difficult. So you go around, you see that everything is talking about food. So that's why the way it has cut this corn. And another interesting is it cut this corn into 10 pieces and it's giving you 10 pieces of points. So you have to be creative, the way to send information. So you cut the corn into 10 and then the message the people are taking away are 10 in number, yeah? So biofuel, how grains are being used for bioethanol, so depleting the availability of this food. So it's just it makes it very easy for your audience to follow with you. If you convert this to a text, you may have up to 10 pages what this person, the creator of this infographics, has given us on one page. It's amazing. You can take time when you get it to look at it. We don't have time. We're supposed to ask you to look at them and give us what you understand. You will see that many people will bring out a lot just by looking at it. So when we look at it, a lot of people will see religion. This is talking about religion, actually. What people from Denmark, what they think about using religious symbol in public places, like workplaces. So when you see this, like a hijab for a Muslim woman, so it tells you something about religion, that what you're looking at may be around religion, okay? So this is how to be creative. You use something because you're giving information and perception about having symbols of religion in public places. So you put this kind of thing. This is a pie chart. So, but now instead of having the circle pie chart, the person has carefully used like a hijab to make a pie chart. So as you're looking at it, you're thinking about religion, the message is coming home before you can get the numbers. So it is very good. You look at retention advantage of infographics. So the creator of this, talking about politicians' salaries and income inequity in different parts of the world. So the highest one there, we have the Kenya. So there is the highest inequality with politicians when it comes to how fat it is compared to what the ordinary person is taking. Interestingly, they don't have Nigeria here. I was so angry when I saw this because I don't know if Kenya will beat us if we have this, if we have Nigeria on this chart. They don't have Nigeria. So they use like a pot belly man, you know, when your pot belly is, so it looks like you've embezzled a lot of money, you've eaten a lot of things that are unhealthy. So that's why they made it a man who is pregnant. So you look at the thin people, the slender people are the masses because they are comparing inequality, politician versus the ordinary person. So look at this. So it's very interesting. So as you look at it, you begin to like it and imagine the man that's pregnant and then standing beside the straight stomach person who is you and I, who are not politicians. And then you look at the country by country. You look at the country that are almost equal. Look at the first one. So you can see some countries are saying that there are some sort of equality between the politicians and the ordinary people in the street. So this is infographic again. So it is making for retention, to retain what you have learned. So even if you go away now, you remember that Kenya had times 24 of what the ordinary persons are using. See how skillful they are, this one times 20 times 15 times, like that, in relation to the ordinary persons. So good infographics must be accurate because people know if you go online, you can find salaries of Kenyan people, you can find the minimum wage. So you can do the mathematics to find the relative equality or inequality. So you can find out if it's true or not. So if you're making infographic for the beauty of it, you will be making a very big mistake. It must be accurate so that it doesn't misrepresent information. And it must be easy to understand. It must be relatable to your audience, the people you're making it for. Who are you presenting to? Is it in your policy brief that you're putting it in? Or you're going for a policy presentation that you want to put it? So you really need to make sure that it relates. You use images that will relate to your audience, that will pass message to them. It should only show what is necessary. In as much as we are trying to be brief, you must put all that's needed for them to understand, but then you don't put too much of it. So loading your infographic with too much information, text icon, picked are common mistake that people make when they're creating infographics. They want to see beauty, but they overloaded. So giving the wrong information, I said that these are common mistakes. So the infographic being too long and clashing too many colors. We advise you use 2 colors, 2 contrasting colors, and not more. But when your organization has maybe in their logo more than 2, we recommend you do 2 to 4 colors in your infographics because the eyes will be confused when they're dealing with more than 4 colors. So do not overcolor. So stick to 4 max if you're building your infographics. So the traditional colors in painting or in technical drawing, we call the red, yellow, and blue. So they are the traditional colors. So we have a color model that says in this color palette, the yellow, the red, and blue are the traditional colors. So you build around them. If you look at the color palette, opposite the blue, you have orange. So it's a good idea to take blue and orange because they are contrasting. So, but we call them complementary colors. So complementary colors are those colors that when you mix them, they swallow each other and become like gray. So if you have paint in your house, get blue paint, pour in orange paint. You see that you have no blue, you have no orange, you have something like a gray. So these colors that are able to swallow themselves when you mix them But when you put them side by side, they contrast. They are what we call the complementary colors. So try your hands on complementary colors when you're building your infographics. So you see opposite red is green. So red and green are complementary colors. So use them. See the blue and orange, see the yellow. So yellow and purple are complementary. So use them, yellow and purple, yellow beside purple. So play with these colors, complementary colors. So you can use this circle and find your contrast. So if you're using the lighter green, you can see the lighter purple that it will go with. Opposite it is the complementary counterpart when you're doing the colors. So this color chart can be helpful for you to choose your colors. They really will be contrasting. So this one is very wrong. So you have a lot of colors and then a lot of images, a lot of shapes. The diagram is complicated. So this is an infographic, but it has been flawed by a lot of policy makers and a lot of people who are in the evidence practice. So this is a no-no. It's confusing, it's difficult. Remember we said it should not be difficult to understand. This is a lot of information is here, your new healthcare system. They try to combine the Obamacare and different kind of things, but it's really very complicated. If you spend time, you can understand it, but it doesn't obey the rule of infographics. So this is one of the infographics that is rejected by the practice people, the practitioners in this field. So if you're planning your infographic, know your intended audience, like I said, so you can know that connect with the shapes and images you're using. And what is your goal? What's the goal of that infographic? Are you using it for presentation? Are you trying to pop and people can start using it and citing you? You can also put it in your paper you have written as part of aids to helping people understand what you're writing. So you can determine the success of infographic with key performance indicator of how many people use the infographic, how many times they've been cited. If you publish them like web image, you can publish it like a web image, and then people who download them would recognize you in their presentations and in their write-ups. So you can use that, how many people use it, how many people cited it, or if you make a presentation that people understood it. So those can be your KPIs to how you have used it. So your audience, you should ask where are they from, where they work. If they're in position of power, people in position of power don't like a lot of cartoon. If you're making a policy presentation to policymakers, the high authority people, you may not like to put a lot of cartoons. So think about your audience before you know what you get on that infographic. What's their demographic, their age, their sex, all of that are important in choosing what you're putting. How are they viewing this information? What do they already know? What are they thinking about that issue? So you know what to put in there. If they're believing that is biased sector or these are feminists, so you may not start introducing icons that will bring about feminism. So you run away from that, so they don't confirm what they have in mind. Except what they have in mind is to your advantage, then you can use those. So are they skeptic to above? Why should they care? That means the so what question. So what? Why should they care about your presentation? So that should guide you in designing your infographic. Every single line is important. Word shape that you use should aid in understanding the graphic that you put in your infographic. If it does not aid, please delete. You don't need to color red, blue, green if it doesn't add any value, if it doesn't help them to understand the graphic. So any element added must have a function. Lest I forget, use sans serif fonts like the Helvetica, Arial, Jean Sans. These are very clear styles, font styles. They are clear. They don't have all of the, like when you're doing letter writing, the manual one in primary school, they tell you how to join the legs of F, the T's, join them to the next one. So those ones that have those styles are not good for infographics because they are not easy. They are not easily perceived by the eyes, and they are not friendly. But this one, that are simple, they are better. Help vertical areas, whether Arial Black or the Arial Jean Sans, even Tahoma is good. So ways to create emphasis. You can create emphasis by putting all capital letter, or making bold, or italicizing some of them, or making bigger. The font can be bigger than others, so they will know that the one bigger has something you're drawing their attention to, or different color. So keep font consistent. Use the same style in preparing your infographic. You can use title text for takeaway message. Yeah. So like the message now, politician salary and income equality, like we had when we're talking about retention. So you can see that the title is right and is clear. Politician salaries and income inequality. So you can get the message. Yeah. There's importance of color. When you put color this way, you can see the image to the left is easier to understand than the one to the right, because the eyes appreciate color faster than shape. So when you make a divide on the lines of shape, it's not as easy to understand like making a divide on the lines of color. So consider color more when you're making distinction than shapes. So tips for color: darker, brighter colors will read as more. That if you paint, or if you use a palette and give it a blue and give another one sky blue, so it's rare that the blue, the dark blue, means either higher percentage or something. So when you're using color, use darker ones if there is a high prevalence or something. So, and use gray to denote maybe neutral, unimportant. If you have a data that is not really important, but you got it, you can put it, you can paint it neutral color. So it shows not important, but it's there. So utilize white space. You see here, you have white space. So white space helps your work to come out. So don't fill everywhere and there is no white space. Every color used must have a reason for being there. Like I said earlier, choose the appropriate palette. The higher the contrast between objects, the more differently they are perceived, and the better. So color can be used as a means of communicating emphasis, like I've said, hierarchy or particular structure. Look at this one, shadow signal, the practice of censorship. So when you see new trends in media censorship over the last 2 years, now you like have two different titles, but they're saying the same thing. So people can read differently. And you see the colors, like you have electricity, here is dense, here is lighter. So they use color skills to show emphasis in this infographic. So, and then the numbers, so you can know what the numbers are saying. So this also is skill. So you can pour the very bright colors where you want the attention to be. And when we're talking about, when we're writing policy brief, when I did that with the other group, so we're trying to say, instead of 10%, you can say 1 in 10. So now, you, instead of that 1 in 10, you can put these, you draw these people, 10 persons, and color one red. So it means 1 in 10. You can do that in infographic. So if you're talking about prevalence, maybe poverty, so you can put it to show these women, of 10 women, 1 person is the only one feeding well or something. So family planning, you know the symbol for family planning. So use recognizable icons, like using cross means hospital. But if you're dealing with audience that are multi-religion, you won't be using cross for people who are of the Islam faith. So you have to be sensitive. Yet cross means hospital in the general term. But if your audience are all Muslims, so you may not want to use cross for hospital. Like this map now may be showing hospitals, hotels, libraries with all of these signs you're seeing here. So think about your audience, know what is appropriate for the audience, even when it's recognizable, because we're trying to engage, we're trying to influence policy issues. Photography is also good. Like here, talking about subway. So because subways, these are graph is about subways in the United States, and some other countries, how they are faring. Seoul, Beijing, Shanghai, New York City, Moscow. So using this pie chart, now because subways are known for pies, you see, so this person now made the pie chart to be like a pie, a real pie. Is a very helpful way to relate with subway. So this is very good. I hope you've understood what makes an infographic and you know why they can be effective. And now you can describe how to plan your infographic. You can put things together and you roll. After this, I have some references, more tips. You can use these online resources to know more about infographics if you want to do that. So now I'm done, so we can interact more.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's a beautiful one. We have a question.
Yes, please.
First, the presentation was beautiful, but I'm not happy that you said men with pot bellies. Why don't women have pot bellies? Why describing Kenya?
Hello? Hello?
That was just on a lighter note.
No, I didn't hear. I want to hear. I didn't hear. My line was...
Okay, I said on a lighter note. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
I said I wasn't happy
I can
for
hear you.
seeing men with pot bellies. When you were mentioning the Kenyans, women don't have pot bellies. That was the lighter note anyway. So,
yeah, it shows inequality. You're trying to communicate.
Thank you very much for this beautiful presentation. So I was going to ask, I know we use Microsoft Excel to design some of those graphics visuals. Are there peculiar softwares one can use in designing this other than Excel? Thank you.
For infographics, yes, there are simple tools that you can use online to do infographics, but simple except you want to really go advanced for drawing your infographics or preparing them. But I recommend that you use, if you have Microsoft Word, you can put your images together, or if you're not skilled, you can use text box, arrange them the way you want, and then crop them, and they stay together. That simple way, layman. So this is the simple way you can do that. You can also use the PowerPoint. You can make them on the PowerPoint and also group them. You group them so they can move as one. So you can also use Vengage. So Vengage, Vengage, is a free app. You can download that from the net. So if you put the information you need, it can generate infographic for you. You can also use what they call PictoChart. PictoChart can also help you to create infographics for presentations, either in your field work or for what other uses that you have. Yeah. So these are two I recommend that are simple to understand: the PictoChart, the Vengage, and I said again, you can use Microsoft Word, you can use PowerPoint. They are great.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other question? Okay, so while you're processing your question, let me share with you the policy brief by your coordinator. I didn't get a permission from her to do this, but I know she won't mind. So I wanted to show you that even as I would have shared others, but I want to connect with you more so you see that in your midst, someone has already done policy brief and she's doing well with that. So we critique it as a group. So this is her policy brief. She did this July 2020. That's when we finished that training, and she's done it and she's good to go. We are ready to hand over this policy brief to a policymaker. Strengthening climate change adaptation capacity of farmers in Nigeria, part to attaining agricultural promotion policy. She called it APP, a nation's food security agenda. So this is her title. So we said a policy brief should have a title, and we said it should have executive summary or key messages. So this is the key messages. You must have it on the first page because the policymakers are looking for the messages, the take-home message. When they look at the key messages, when we interacted with them in Kenya, a lot of members of the parliament were brought together in one room with researchers, and we tried to ask them, if we submit policy brief to you, where do you go to? They said they look at their key messages and go to recommendations. So it's only when they are interested, they can look for data that supported the recommendation you have made. So that's why it is good to put your key messages on the first page and then recommendations actionable. So of course, she's talking about food security. You can see flooding here. That calls picture. Remember, we said picture could be useful. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
I'm hearing you,
I
though it's
thought you,
breaking.
oh,
Hello?
sorry. But you're seeing the screen.
You've stopped
Are you
sharing. You
seeing
were
the
sharing
screen?
before. No, you stopped.
Oh, I didn't stop. I think the network came calling. Okay, let me share again because this will make me connect more with you as we're reviewing the policy brief. We go to maybe infographics or something. So I was sharing, I don't know what happened. Okay, someone tried to call me and it affected the network. So I was sharing the policy brief with you and I'm still sharing it by the coordinator, Dr. Clara Ifanyubi. So she did this in July 2020. So I'm showing you strengthening climate change adaptation capacity of farmers in Nigeria, part to attaining agriculture promotion policy, APP, she called it, and nation's food security agenda. So I said for a policy brief like we did, we said it should have a title, a smart title, an actionable title. So you look at, she's strengthening. So there is an action word there, strengthening climate change adaptation, part to strengthening, part to attaining this agenda. So we talked about linking your issues to the voice of the moment. So the agenda, there's an agenda, National Food Security Agenda. We have an agenda nationwide. So she's trying to link her policy issue to the existing agenda. That way she can attract attention. And then she has given 3 key messages, okay? So if you look at it now, she had made blue, big color. I said the stronger color will have attention. So this one is like the sky. So this one is the deep blue. So the deep blue, policy brief, and is the bigger issue. Policy brief is what you're receiving. Then my title. So it's in order that she has the strong color before the lighter color. Now I say the policy brief must have key message or executive summary. And I said, I don't know if you heard before the network came, that policymakers were put together in one room in January in Kenya. We assembled in Kenya, many researchers from different African countries and policymakers. So we interacted with them and we asked them, when I submit a policy brief to you, what do you do? They said they quickly go to key messages and then go to recommendations. So if the key messages are not there on the first page, they may put your policy brief in the trash can or in the to-do list, and they never do. So why don't you put your key message on the front page like this one and make the messages short? Like as you're reading, we can read these messages together and everybody can read it. So it means that the policymaker can read it. Nigeria will in the long run experience huge reduction in crop yield as a result of the distortions caused by the shift in atmospheric temperature and rainfall. So remember the problem, the policy issues. At what stage are you trying to influence the issue? So if you look at this now, she's trying to target the agenda. So that's why she's talking about magnitude. So she's talking about, in the long run, huge reduction. So she's doing magnitude of the problem. So always think about the policy issue. At what stage in the policy making cycle that we displayed are you targeting? So that you know whether you're talking about effectiveness, magnitude, you know what you are talking about. So you highlight it and make sure you have evidence that will address those. So you look at her second message. Food security problem cannot be tackled without addressing the risk and uncertainties occasioned by climate change. Simple. And then last message, strengthening farmers' climate change adaptation capacity is a sure path to attaining food security in Nigeria. The policymaker can now say, wow, so if I strengthen the adaptation capacity, I will attain food security. And already the agenda is there, food security agenda. So how do I now strengthen farmers' climate change and adaptation capacity? They start looking at the data that you have put forward. That's the way to go. So it's important. So she had put the source of the image there because she didn't create, she didn't snap this photograph by herself. So that's why, to give credit to the person who owns the photo, she had put the web page, you can see there. If she used her camera to get the photograph, she wouldn't have needed to put that source of information. So you see her summary, introduction. So if you read this policy brief, you now see all the parts that we described. So you see the key issues. So she gave the options. Notice that her policy brief is 6 pages. I said we should target 4 to 6 pages. So she stuck to the recommended number of pages. So they may look at the pages first and it scares them, they run away. So try not to exceed 6 when you're preparing. So she had put the key issues. Remember what we said in infographics, that we should use color or italicizing to highlight something. So key issues, she had used the color instead of the black, the regular black, to highlight that these are the issues. So this is skillful, okay? So she has table and she has used blue color, contrast, blue and white make a good contrast. So she has made contrast. So it is good. So you go and she had put the source. She didn't create that table, so she had put the source. If it's not your creation, always acknowledge the source of that information. So she had provided the policy options. So this is her creation. The figure is her creation. So that's why she has cited herself, because she has published it. So she has cited. Maybe we find out why she put B. I've not noticed that she put B. Because if she has cited herself first, then this becomes B. If she hasn't cited herself in A, so we don't need the B. So we can look at it again. Okay, so look at another image she had put. She's thinking about climate change adaptation capacity. Is not also has. So she had put the source. And then she tried to put a little information about herself to help those who are reading to know that she has some experiences, so to increase her believability. That's why she put it. It's not compulsory you put it. You can finish your policy brief without putting this. But depending on your audience, she has done her audience baggage to determine her audience. So if her audience are these people who are looking forward to, who are you, before they can listen to you. So this would be very helpful that you put this, so they can see what you've done. She has got this fellowship from the Circle, and also DFID, which is a very strong organization, has supported the fellowship. So it shows that for them to support the fellowship, that means her proposal was good. Okay, so this is a way to give credibility up in your policy brief. But if your audience doesn't really care about who you are, they are interested in the information and the source of the information, you may not put about the author, just go straight. So these are references, the sources she has used to write this policy brief. So we have only one Ifeanyi, so I will go back to her to remove the B that we have in that citation. So the references are giving us one Ifeanyi. So this is a great work she has done within the pandemic. It has been very useful for all of us. So I have more policy briefs that came from a project, but I wanted to connect with you. Others are not around your area, since you're dealing with climate smart agriculture. So this policy brief is very relevant to your area. That's why I feel like sharing it. So is there any question you're processing? Any question you're processing? Are you there?
Yes, we
Okay. Is there any question you're processing from the policy brief, that the practical one I've shown you, or the infographic?
Yeah, my question is this. Thank you. The presenter.
Hello? Hello?
Oh, Dr. Sayo.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you write as a chat? So if I say it, I can now respond to it. Can you write on the chat room?
Am I on?
Dr. Sir, please, if you're hearing the
Hello.
can you put down the question, the chat box, so she can respond? Your network is breaking. We can't even hear you at all.
Yeah.
I'm hearing very well. And she said I should write.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
No, we can't hear you clearly.
I can hear you now. Can you ask the question?
These Zaria people, your network is always a problem. Please, Dr. Issa, put it down. Put it down.
Is there? Check, Clara.
Okay. Is it there in the chat? Okay.
Okay, yes, okay. I said check, the person wrote, Dr. Fadula, check the screen share, please. I didn't.
No, the next
and
one.
then, okay, the next one. What are necessary follow-up to policy submitted? Okay, the necessary follow-up to submitted policy, maybe policy brief, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So if you have submitted a policy brief, you have a contact. That's why we said you should do audience baggage before submitting it. So if you do audience baggage, you'll be able to identify your primary audience and the secondary audience. So the secondary helps to link you up with the audience primary or to make a way for you to get in there. So if you submit to private, to the primary audience, it's good to have your card, your business card. So you can give them to contact you. And if we do elevator speech, so elevator speech will help you know the skills to pass your message in like 20 seconds or 30 seconds, a summary of who you are or your message, your research message. So if you know the skill to pass such elevator speech to the next person, so when you make that submission, if they don't give you opportunity to speak to it, so you'll be able to use an elevator speech skill to say one thing that makes it memorable, that they will remember to look for you. And you can also ask, can I contact you? Okay, so if it's on phone, they'll give you a business card. If it's on email, via email, they also tell you my business card has all the details. They can also tell you, contact my secretary. They can point you to the channel of communication that they want. You need it from them, so you have to go their own way. So if you be kind enough to let me hear from you again, or to let me come back to you, I can provide more information. So he can give you appointment or tell you, I'll meet with my committee or my technical working group to review this and we get back to you. So will it be nice if I write you after a week or 2 weeks? He said that is okay, or make it a month or something. So that's how you preempt them to giving you appointment or to agreeing to taking your call. Or you do them a text message. They may say, right, just do a test. Do not call, do me a message or something. So when you agree, so you can write, refer to our last meeting and your instruction that do you an SMS. So you can write. When they read that, you connect what happened in the last meeting, so they'll be able to do that. So that's how you know how to follow up, because if you don't have an appointment and you don't have a secondary audience that is linking you and giving you way to go there, yeah, so there is nothing you can do about it. So primary audience, secondary audience will be important. She's asking, Dr. Clara Ifanyo is asking examples. Yes, that's what I'm giving. I'm giving example, my experience. Okay, so I've met with what the place of organ is in policy and advocacy meeting in scaling of policy brief. Okay, organization maybe. Yeah, so I have met with the Ministry of Environment, and they require that I come back when they have some kind of high-level meeting, and that meeting never happened. And then we have lockdown comes. So I still have a secondary audience that tells me normalcy has not returned. Okay, so this is how it goes. But sometimes our burning issues may die down where we're trying to engage, but it shouldn't deter us from doing it, because it's one 1+, that we have passed our policy brief to the policymakers is 1+. Then follow up to see that actually they work on it. Sometimes you don't have a new policy. You may have them to implement the one they have. That may be what you achieve. It may also be that you now influence the agenda and you start setting agenda around that issue. So that's also an achievement. So don't always think that your policy brief must bring about a new policy or amendment of a policy. It may be that the policies are in existence, you never knew about it, they didn't advertise it, they didn't launch it. And then your policy brief, when they discuss in their working group, somebody says, but we have something similar. So you can make them bring out that policy from the shelf and start looking at the ways to implementing it or to relaunching it if it wasn't launched, or if it was launched and it's no longer known. So these are dividends of your presenting policy briefs to the right quarters. So we can meet like in our Women in Science and in our evidence group. So we are trying, be making contact with the commissioners that we see the secondary audiences for us, so we can really get their buy-in to be able to influence the final people who will receive the policy brief. So we also, there are some cases that the commissioners can be primary audience, but we found out in the state where we are, in the River State, so we try to do audience baggage to find out that our commissioners are not so powerful as they should be in the state. So they don't qualify for primary audience in our case. So they become secondary audience. But in some states, commissioners may be primary audience to your issue. So you need to do audience baggage to find out the structure. Remember the policy and the politics stream. So you need to find out the structure of the politics in your area. So you don't equate what I experience with what you will experience, because our audiences, the policy stream, the politics streams are not the same. So you need to do your own audience baggage so you can do the neat thing. They need to emphasize patience, commitment, and dedication in influencing policy. Of course, we can't underestimate the power of patience. Like I've said, there are some I have started following for over 2 years. There are policies around biological technologies to remediation. I have been on it for years. I'm not giving up, so you need to be patient. And because it's not something that has expired, it's still on, the need is still there burning, the environment continue to be degraded. So my issue has not expired, it's still on. So I continue trying new people. So sometimes your audience baggage is wrong or is not holistic. So you find the problem, you go back, you remember the cycle, you go back to problem or the audience identification or their baggaging, sizing them up to know what they actually want. So you know whether you're meeting the right people or the wrong people. And the way the ministries are divided, sometimes you look at the ministry by name and they are the wrong people. You may have a government agency like the DPR, you have the Federal Ministry of Environment. Sometimes it's the DPR that is supposed to be my primary audience. I'm going to Ministry of Environment because by their name, they are catering for environment. So we also need to influence policies around the devolution of powers among the government ministries and departments. So they are not clear on their mandates. Some are interwoven. So it makes it that when you meet this agency, it tells you my mandate starts here and stops here. The other one, they are overlapping. So that's what I found out in the government structure of allotting mandates to policies and agencies. Okay, from Professor Olufomi Deshope, said there are no time when policy briefs are solicited from the public. This is one thing that happens in serious world. It can happen in Nigeria, I can tell you that. They're not going to require policy brief from us. We are the ones to bring up the policies. Yeah, there are some decisions that serious world would like to take, the politicians, like the climate change thing. So the American government requested policy brief from scientists in relevant areas, and then scientists around climate change, engineers, scientists, and agriculture experts, science communicators, they all came together to form working groups and to bring evidences from their different small windows, and then they came up with policy brief they submitted to American government. Trump seemed not to be convinced. Most times he's not convinced about climate change, but when the politics gets hotter, he tried to play down. So, to convince that the political will, we mentioned the political will is a big factor. They have provided all the evidences. Sometimes the political will is not there. So you need to now find the lobbyists to lobby the leader who doesn't have the political will. So the lobbyists can lobby him and win him over. Maybe those who are deciders of the campaign or whatever. So you can meet them. These PDP chairman, like in our country, APC, all these people, they can be our lobbyists. So if they understand you, because the politician may not have a lot of time to understand you, and if he's not in the area, maybe he's not even a scientist or he's not even educated. So maybe these lobbyists will help us, who are able to influence them to tell them this is good, just trust me, this is good. So we need to find those persons to add to our secondary audiences so they can help influence it. So I have from Professor Ololade, thanks for such interesting presentation. My question is, how do policy briefs get to the appropriate office? And at what point is the policy brief necessary? So the policy briefs will get to appropriate office when you, as a researcher, has identified policy issue. That's why I said you should find policy issues around your research. So the big, remember I said for it to be a policy issue, it has a public concern. It doesn't have to be that minutest problem that you're trying to develop methodology around. These are research questions you're asking. So it should be big, public issue. Then if you think that is big, you now look through the policy making cycle to know at what point your policy issue will be relevant. So you know where you're targeting and know the audience who will be at that point. The primary audience at the formulation stage may not be the primary audience at the agenda stage. So you need to find out at what point that your policy issue will meet. So all those will help you to decide who your audience will be and the kind of information you're looking for, whether you need to provide numbers or evidence that it is happening, or the recurrent, the frequency, or you're trying to show it has worked somewhere else, or you're trying to prove that this is not working in Nigeria. Okay, so you need to find out where you are so you know the kind of evidence that you are getting and put it there. So this is how you generate your policy brief, because you've identified that policy issue that's big around the public and you have evidence, or you can generate evidence from the different sources of evidence I said you can generate. Yeah. So there is need to be sensitive to change of hand at the ministry level. Yes. Hence the need to carry the new person along. Very true, Dr. Fadula, because sometimes you're making progress. It has happened to me. You're making progress with a particular government. You've identified your primary audience. Maybe you have worked your way to them. And then the tenure ends and it goes out. The new person who takes over is not interested in your issue. So back to square one. You have to now start again with audience baggage around the new person. It's not many of them that will inherit what the former person was doing. At what point you have got, maybe you made a presentation and you're supposed to do a repeat presentation or something. And then now you need to make a new submission. And maybe you need to modify that policy brief, because remember, you're doing a complete new audience baggage. So assuming this one has a cultural thing that makes him not to like some things you have in the policy brief, you need to now remove those and put what will captivate this other one while retaining the key message that is being projected. Yeah. So Apostle Adesope said, it seems that the bottom line is lobbying audience baggage, etc. Yes, lobbying is important, but to have the information is key. To understand the policy issue that you have to be clear on it, because they're going to ask you the so what question. So what? So if you get the lobbyist and you can't convince the lobbyist, they won't buy your information. So you need a buy-in by the lobbyist. So you need to be sure you have a policy issue. And then you need to be sure you have evidence supporting the presentation, the solution that you're bringing on board, or the suggestions you're bringing. You must have evidences, robust evidence, not just evidence, that will support the options you're giving them and eventually the recommendation. And then audience baggage, like you said, you can't even amplify enough. Audience baggage is more than needed. So make audience baggage at all times so you can know who you are talking to. You don't waste your time talking to the wrong person because they won't have influence. You want someone that will have influence on your policy issue, okay? So that you can bring about that desired change. That's why you need the audience. So do audience baggaging very well. Find out what they know about your policy issue and what might interest them. Yeah, so Dr. Fadula said lobbying is the word, yet political will is always absent. It is best that policy matter be tackled at the institutional level rather than individual level. Dr. Fadula, both levels are important, individual level, institutional level, because at the institution, we have a head of institution, we have the vice chancellor, we have the director's research office, we have different people at the institutional level who are heads. So if the people are not convinced or they don't have the capacity, they don't have the experience to lead this movement, what happens? Nothing happens. So individuals who are convinced and who are trained should begin to find their levels out of the circle. And if you make the influence, if you exert the influence, you can, because I know all of us want to make a societal change that is significant. So if you're able to influence a policy, you have influenced the society more. And you may even someday get appointment to go implement that policy that you influence, not because you're looking for appointment, but I'm just saying that it is multifaceted what may happen around it. And the satisfaction that your policy, that your evidence was able to influence a policy. I did influence one at some point when there was issues around a community in Eleme, when they had a discharging channel to the river, Njuru River in Eleme. So this conflict between the community and the company that was making the discharge. So I was researching on the water. So I was able to provide my evidence with other publications around Ogoni and Eleme. I now synthesized them and presented that to the company. And the company took it to their CDC meeting, and they were able to convince the community that what was going on in the river was not entirely as a result of what was coming out. So we did a spectrum of assessment, and then we provided. So we need to start talking with policymakers. We need to, so our policymakers can be in the industry. We shouldn't always think that policymakers are government people. Government people are okay, but we also have policymakers in the industry, depending on the kind of research you're doing. So you need to find out where the policymakers are, okay? So we have also, hence climate change matters should be carried on by a working group of NIFAAS. So Clara can have a muzzle to rest on. Yeah, this is good. The group can be stronger going as a group led by your coordinator or by president or whoever. But then you need to have the evidence, either all the group members, the research work you've done, you need to learn synthesis. Of course, Dr. Clara had learned evidence synthesis, so she's good on it. She can even train the group on evidence synthesis. So you do evidence synthesis, add the ones you have in the group, to the ones you can find from other reliable sources. We have already done training on how to access evidence. So she also has the know-how on that. So she can also train the group. So when you do the accessing of evidence and the synthesis, you have evidence, and as a group now, you should be more formidable to present a policy brief from a group and not from individual. But it doesn't stop her if she has enough evidence to submit her policy brief like the one she has. So if she's submitting and the group is submitting, the ultimate is that we have influenced that and we are better for it. So even if you are attempting from two arsenals, you're shooting from here, you're shooting from here. If one gets through before the other, that is fine. Yeah. Okay, so now we have okay, I don't have another. I thought some other person wrote. Okay, nothing. Okay, yes, there is. Evidence synthesis is always ongoing. Yeah, evidence synthesis is always ongoing. So you have to synthesize the evidence you have accessed. Is important. So, but you need to know the skills of assessing and synthesizing evidence. So this is fine. I will give you the presentation, Dr. Fadula. Yeah, any other question? Okay, I think we're fine. There are no other concerns. So I'm going to send a document to you directly or to Dr. Ifeanyi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope we've exhausted our questions. I hope we've exhausted all our questions.
There's a question waiting for you there. You didn't read it.
Oh, I didn't. I said, what next?
Yes, that's the question for coordinator.
It's rhetorical.
Oh, okay. Okay, so coordinator, what next? Now, can you put the group together to write a policy brief? But the group will be given. Yeah, go ahead.
I've always reminded them that at the end of all the capacity building we are doing, we have our group project, and developing a policy brief is one of it.
Okay.
So I have listed out things we need to do.
Please,
the NIFAAS will not spend their money to train us. We acquire the capacity and we put it right inside our pockets. No. We are going to showcase what we have learned. We are going to make impact with it. So most of the things we've learned, in fact, I just want to give them, as we're ending this today, I post it by next week, put it up in the group. I've shared our members, people that will do the policy brief, people that will do infographics, people that will provide, produce for us posters, documentaries, audios. We need to do those things, and I've created a Twitter handle. In fact, as we are talking now, I just tweeted our program. I even tagged you, the facilitator. We need to make impact. We need to be visible in what we are doing.
Yes.
We cannot just hide in our corner and be making impact. No, the world needs to hear about us. Most of us here, they have wonderful works they have done. And nobody has heard of it. So that is not the way to go. We need to bring together what we have done, extract the relevant points from it, and let the world hear about it. So I have a plan for the group. So now we are concluding this. Those ones will come up. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Deshope. I saw you wrote that, Dr. Eukaria, you're the best. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll be happy to support if there's anything I can do to support going forward. I'll be happy to support. Wishing us all the best, but please complete the assignment Because if you don't complete them when the work is shared, some persons will be overworked. But if you complete and understand it, it becomes easier. So when it's easy, everybody understands what to do. They'll be very willing to work. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I have a suggestion.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a suggestion.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
In case the coordinator is considering, the coordinator is considering pairing people, I would like to pair with your carrier. Thank you.
Without mercy on some people.
Audience baggaging in place already.
Dr. Issa, we've noted your comments. Your request, not even comment.
Tell me with your carrier, I beg you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Primary audience.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful. I think I have to call on someone to help us render a vote of thanks to our facilitator. It's been wonderful. Anyway, I am not surprised. I wasn't expecting anything less than this. So,
don't call at this Oporo.
Dr. Issa, you're interrupting me. Please, I've not heard somebody's voice. Dr. Salau, are you here? Dr. Salau, can we hear your voice? Dr. Salau. Okay. Dr. Ugwoke. Can we hear your voice? Dr. Ugwoke. I hope they're here with us, or they just...
He's here. He just made a comment now.
Okay, he said network is dealing with him there.
Okay. So let me call on Dr. Afolabi to please render a vote of thanks to our facilitator. So we close formally. Okay. Dr. Afolabi. Can you unmute yourself? Unmute yourself and speak.
He's in the Elias Palace.
I want to hear people's voice that have not spoken today. Okay, Dr. Ayinde.
Thank you, Doc.
Better.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you very much. The evening has been very wonderful, and all the other trainings too. And I'm very happy that I've spent quality time with the group. Thank you very much. I regards my deep appreciation to the facilitator and the resource person. Thank you very much. You are indeed the best.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Professor Adeshofe, you know I must call you. Please formally close us.
If I say you shouldn't call me, I still call you. I want to sincerely appreciate Dr. Eukaria. This has been a very wonderful experience. If you noticed, I sent a message that I have some papers to take care of. I couldn't just abandon this class. My paper is just scattered around my table to patiently wait to get to the end. It's been quite comprehensive, incisive, and well thought. Participants. Thank you so very much. And wish you more. I pray you continue to go from height in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. Thank you. So I join my voice to others and appreciate our own, you know, our own is our own very dog, the facilitator for this wonderful training. It's really been wonderful listening to her. And in fact, as she was just training us, I remembered that the policy and advocacy group of NIFAAS. Anyway, this thing was posted on NIFAAS platform. So I wonder why they are not here. I only see few, because it is a very important aspect of what they are doing. The policy and advocacy also need to be part of this. But unfortunately, anyway, we'll still post the recordings. You can listen to it. So I thank you so very much for the wonderful training. For some of us ladies here, Dr. Eukaria is one of the people I look up to. The kind of energy I see in her, I don't know where she gets it from. And the kind of product things coming out from her, in fact, I think I would say she's a role model to me. I wish one day when I grow up, I will be like her. So I really thank her for this wonderful training. And as we requested earlier, please, anytime we need your assistance, bear with us and still accommodate us when we call for assistance. But for now, all the facilitators will still be on our platform till Friday. So for the team members, make maximum use of the time that we have them around. After Friday, we will disengage them from the platform. Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you all the team members for your time. It's been quite engaging since almost a month, and now we've not had rest, training every week from this to this, but it is for our own good. And I'm happy that majority of us are coping with it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with this, we formally bring our training to a close. Thank you and good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.